Eric Turner stood on the porch, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the manicured lawn. He watched 6-year-old Leo chase a butterfly, his laughter like wind chimes. Eric felt a familiar warmth spread through his chest, a feeling deeper and more anchoring than anything he'd experienced during his 2 decades in the military. Duty, loyalty, honor, these had been the pillars of his life, forged in the crucible of service. But family, the family he had built here, was the bedrock. He was retired now, the crisp uniform replaced by comfortable civilian clothes, the battlefield left far behind. Yet, the discipline remained, an ingrained posture, a keen eye for detail. He was a man who valued structure, who believed in doing the right thing, who felt things deeply but often kept them tucked away behind a composed exterior. He was just observant and beneath the surface, profoundly emotional. He'd met Sarah 6 years ago, a few months after returning home for good. She was a single mother with a 2-month-old baby, struggling but fiercely independent. Something about her vulnerability mixed with her resilience had drawn him in. And then there was Leo. From the moment Eric held the tiny, squirming bundle, a bond had formed. He hadn't been there for the birth, hadn't experienced the initial sleepless nights, but he had stepped into the role of father with a dedication that surprised even himself. He'd provided stability, a secure home, a strong male figure. He'd taught Leo how to throw a ball, how to ride a bike, how to stand up for himself. He'd been the one to read bedtime stories, to kiss scraped knees, to attend school plays. He was dad. It wasn't a question of biology. It was a fact of love, commitment, and presence. He'd never asked about the biological father. Sarah had mentioned a brief, regrettable relationship, and Eric, ever the pragmatist, had focused on the present and the future. The past didn't matter. He was building their family. They weren't married, not yet, though it was something they discussed quietly. Sarah was hesitant, she said, needing time. Eric understood. He was patient. He believed in earning trust, in proving his commitment day by day. Their life was comfortable, if not extravagant. Eric's military pension provided security, and he did occasional consulting work. Sarah worked part-time. They were a unit. Leo darted towards him, the butterfly forgotten. "Dad, look what I drew!" Eric knelt, examining the crayon drawing. It was a picture of their house, a stick-figure family. Eric, Sarah, and a smaller Leo, holding hands under a sun that took up half the page. "That's incredible, champ," Eric said, his voice rough with genuine affection. "You're getting really good." Leo beamed, puffing out his chest. "It's us. Our family." "That's right," Eric said, ruffling his hair. "Our family." Sarah emerged from the house carrying a tray with lemonade and cookies. She smiled, a soft, weary smile that always tugged at Eric. "Leo, slow down. Birthday boy needs his fuel." Tomorrow was Leo's 6th birthday. 6 years. 6 years Eric had poured his love, time, and resources into this little boy. 6 years he had considered himself a father in every way that mattered. They were having a small party tomorrow, grandparents coming, a few of Leo's friends from school. It was going to be perfect. A strange thought, a flicker of an idea he'd been contemplating for a while surfaced. Sarah had been discussing updating their wills, getting their affairs in order. With Eric providing the bulk of the financial support and being Leo's primary male figure, his lawyer had gently suggested months ago that formalizing his relationship with Leo might be wise for future legal protections, school enrollment, medical decisions, inheritance. Adoption was one path, or perhaps guardianship. Either way, proof of paternity or lack thereof would simplify things. A DNA test, just a formality, the lawyer had said, a simple swab. Eric had agreed, arranging it quietly, wanting to surprise Sarah once the paperwork was ready. It wasn't about doubt, it was about pragmatism, securing Leo's future within the family structure Eric had built. He looked at Leo, his son, chasing another butterfly now. He looked at Sarah, the woman he loved, the mother of his child, his family. "Everything okay, Eric?" Sarah asked, noticing his distant look. "Yeah," he said, standing up, "just thinking how lucky I am. This is everything." He smiled at them, a genuine, unreserved smile. Tomorrow would be a celebration of Leo, of their family, of 6 wonderful years and many more to come. The DNA test results would probably arrive next week, just a piece of paper confirming what he already knew in his heart. He picked up the tray to help Sarah. The scent of lemonade and sugar filled the air, mixing with the fresh-cut grass and the sweet perfume of blooming roses. It was the smell of home. It was the smell of his life, a life built on trust, love, and the unshakable belief in the family he had created. He felt secure, content. He had faced danger and uncertainty around the world, but here on this porch, with Leo and Sarah, he was finally and completely at peace. The thought of the DNA test was a distant hum, an administrative task soon to be completed. It held no power against the solid reality of his love for Leo, the countless memories they had made, the undeniable bond that tied them together. Biology was just one small part of what made a father, he believed. Presence, love, sacrifice, those were the true markers, and by those measures, he was undeniably Leo's dad. The paper would simply formalize the truth they already lived. He couldn't have been more wrong. The truth, waiting silently in a sealed envelope, was not a simple formality. It was a demolition charge set to blow his world apart. But as he watched Leo laugh, bathed in the golden light of dusk, Eric Turner knew nothing but the simple, profound joy of being dad. The house was alive with laughter and the cheerful chaos of a child's birthday party. Balloons bobbed against the ceiling, wrapping paper lay in colorful heaps, and the air was thick with the scent of chocolate cake and melting ice cream. Leo, wearing a bright paper crown slightly askew, was surrounded by his friends, his face smeared with cake frosting. Eric watched him, a lump of pure happiness in his throat. This was it. This was the culmination of 6 years of love and effort. This was his son's day. He'd orchestrated everything, from the bouncy castle in the backyard to the pirate-themed cake. He'd invited Sarah's parents, his own, who lived a few states away but sent a generous gift, and the parents of Leo's friends. The house, usually a quiet haven, buzzed with energy and goodwill. Sarah moved gracefully through the crowd, playing the perfect hostess, her smile bright, if a little strained around the edges. She always got anxious during big events. Eric squeezed her hand when she passed, a silent reassurance. They were a team. As the party wound down and the last of Leo's friends were picked up, a courier van pulled up outside. Eric wasn't expecting anything. He signed for a small, flat envelope addressed to him. He frowned, glancing at the return address. It was from the lab that handled the DNA testing. Ah, the formality, he thought. He'd forgotten they might arrive today. He'd planned to open them privately and then discuss the legal steps with Sarah later. But Leo was distracted with new toys, and Sarah was starting to clear up. He decided to just take a quick look now, get it over with. He slipped into his small home office, closing the door just a crack. He sat at his desk, the envelope surprisingly heavy in his hand. He slit it open with a letter opener, pulling out a few sheets of paper. The top sheet was the summary. He scanned it quickly, looking for confirmation, for the expected lines that would affirm the obvious. His eyes landed on a line of text, stark and clinical. Paternity index, 0.0. Probability of paternity, 0.00%. The world tilted. The clinical words swam before his eyes. 0%. It couldn't be right. There had to be a mistake. He flipped through the other pages. Charts, graphs, technical jargon he didn't understand, but the summary sheet was terrifyingly clear. Eric Turner was not the biological father of Leo. A cold dread, unlike any fear he'd known in combat, seeped into his bones. His military training kicked in for a brief second, assessed the situation, remained calm, but this was personal. This was his heart under fire. He reread the line, 0, 6 years. Every hug, every scraped knee, every bedtime story, every sacrifice, every ounce of love, built on a foundation that wasn't his. He stumbled out of the office, the papers trembling in his hand. Sarah was in the living room gathering balloons. Leo was in his bedroom, happily playing. Sarah! Eric's voice was a low, guttural sound he barely recognized. She turned, her smile fading instantly at the look on his face. Eric, what is it? You look terrible. He held out the envelope, the summary sheet facing her. What is this? He whispered, though he knew exactly what it was. Sarah took the papers, her eyes widening as she read, her face drained of color. The small, weary strain Eric had seen earlier intensified, transforming into something else. Panic, guilt, resignation. Eric, I can explain. Explain? His voice rose, the careful composure shattering. Explain 0? Explain 6 years? His breath came in ragged gasps. You told me, you let me believe. It wasn't a lie, not exactly, she cried, tears welling in her eyes. He was my son. I was alone, Eric. I was so young and scared and alone. When you came along, you were so good, so kind to him. He needed a father, I needed someone. I meant to tell you I really did, but then time passed, and you loved him so much, and it just felt like he was yours. Felt like. Eric was shaking now, the betrayal of physical pain tearing through him. I was his father. I raised him. I gave him everything, and you let me? You knew all this time. You knew? Yes, she choked out, tears streaming down her face. I knew. The single word hung in the air, heavy with the weight of years of deception. 6 years. 6 years of believing in a family unit that was, for one of its members, a deliberate performance. The memories flashed before him, teaching Leo to swim, his first day of school, the way Leo's small hand felt in his. Were those moments real for her, or was she just watching him play the role of the unsuspecting father? He looked at her, the woman he thought he knew, the woman he had loved. He saw a stranger. Her justifications, her tears felt like just another layer of the lie. Alone? Scared? He had offered her a home, a life, a partner. He had offered Leo a father, and she had accepted it all, knowing it was built on sand. "Get out," he said, his voice dangerously low, colder than any winter he'd endured. "Eric, please, get out," he roared, the sound raw with pain and fury. "Take him and get out. I can't even look at you right now." Leo, drawn by the raised voices, appeared in the doorway, his eyes wide with fear. "Dad, Mom, what's wrong?" Eric looked at the boy, his son in every way that mattered until 5 minutes ago. The boy whose hand he had held just this morning, wishing him a happy birthday. The face that was a familiar comfort, and now a constant, living reminder of the cruelest deception imaginable. He couldn't reconcile the love he felt with the lie he had been living. The pain was too sharp, too overwhelming. He turned away, unable to bear the sight of either of them. He heard Sarah quickly usher Leo away, heard hushed, tearful words, the closing of a door. He was alone in the living room, surrounded by the remnants of the party. Deflated balloons, scattered presents, the half-eaten cake a symbol of the celebration that had just turned to ash in his mouth. He sank onto the sofa, burying his face in his hands. The shock wore off, replaced by an agonizing wave of grief and despair. 6 years, a lifetime of moments stolen, his dream of family shattered. The man who had always believed in duty and truth had been living a fundamental lie. He sat there for a long time, the sounds of Sarah packing, of Leo's confused whimpers filtering through the walls. He felt hollowed out, gutted. The strong, steady man he was, the man who had faced down physical threats without flinching, was emotionally broken. He didn't know how to put the pieces back together. He didn't know if he even wanted to. The darkness felt absolute. The idea of giving up, of just letting the pain consume him, was a seductive whisper in his ear, his lowest point. The days that followed were a blur of raw pain and stark emptiness. Sarah and Leo were gone. They had left that night, Sarah arranging to stay with a relative. The house, so recently full of life and laughter, was now unnervingly silent. Every object, every corner held a memory of Leo, a phantom echo of the family that had never truly been his. Eric walked through the rooms like a ghost in his own life. The small chair at the kitchen table where Leo ate breakfast, the drawings taped to the refrigerator, the toys scattered in the living room, each was a dagger twist. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. His military discipline, which had always given him structure and control, seemed useless against this kind of internal devastation. He was adrift in a sea of grief, anger, and profound betrayal. He replayed conversations, moments, trying to see where he had missed the signs. Was he so trusting, so blind, or was she just that good at deception? The observation skills he'd honed in the service felt like a cruel joke now. He hadn't seen the most crucial truth right in front of him. The world outside his pain felt distant. Calls from concerned friends went unanswered. His consulting work was ignored. He existed in a vacuum of despair. The almost gave up phase was a tangible weight. What was the point? The future he had envisioned, the legacy he was building, was a mirage. He felt like a fool, a victim of a cruel, calculated emotional theft. One evening, sitting alone in the silent house, staring at the framed photo of him and Leo at the park, something shifted. The overwhelming grief didn't lessen, but beneath it a different feeling began to stir. Cold, righteous anger. It wasn't just personal anymore. This wasn't just about him and Sarah and Leo. This was about the fundamental violation of trust, the manipulation of a man's deepest desire for family, the legal ambiguity and vulnerability such deception created. He thought about other men. How many others had been in his position, investing years, love, and resources into a child they believed was theirs, only to discover a painful truth? How many were trapped, legally or emotionally, with little recourse? His sense of justice, dormant under the weight of personal agony, began to flicker back to life. He remembered his lawyer's casual suggestion about formalizing his relationship with Leo for legal reasons. The very system he had tried to work within had highlighted his vulnerability. There had to be better ways to protect men from such fraud, clearer legal paths for recourse, for unwinding these tangled, dishonest situations. His military training, the discipline he thought had failed him, resurfaced in a new form. Not the discipline of following orders, but the discipline of focus, of strategy, of turning a disadvantage into an objective. He couldn't change the past 6 years. The pain would likely always be there, but he could use it. He could channel it. Pain, if properly harnessed, could be an incredible fuel. The decision formed slowly, then solidified with the force of an iron will. He wouldn't just wallow. He wouldn't be just a victim. He would fight back, not just for himself, but for the principle of truth and fairness in the most intimate areas of life. He remembered the lawyer, family law, the complex, often messy world of relationships, paternity, and rights. It required a clear head, meticulous attention to detail, and a strategic mind, traits he possessed. His emotional depth, which had made the pain so profound, could also give him empathy for others in similar situations, while his detachment, born of the brutal shock, would allow him to navigate the legal landscape without being consumed by emotion in every case. He pulled out his laptop, the screen's blue light harsh in the dim room. He started researching law schools, focusing on programs with strong family law departments. He looked up legal cases involving paternity fraud. The more he read, the clearer his path became. The transformation began here in the silent, wounded house. The just, emotional, observant man was entering a crucible. The fire of betrayal would burn away the naive trust, the uncritical, emotional openness. What would emerge would be harder, sharper. The intense pain would be compartmentalized, not gone, but controlled. His observations would become calculations. His sense of justice would become a strategic weapon. He wouldn't be cold and calculating out of malice, but out of necessity, out of a fierce determination to protect himself and others from the kind of devastation he had experienced. He would become secure, not in the naive belief in unconditional love, but in his own capabilities, his own resilience, his own power to shape his future and fight for what was right. It was a daunting path. Law school in his late 40s, starting a new career from scratch. But the alternative, remaining a broken man in a broken home, was unacceptable. His military training had taught him to adapt, to overcome, to find a new objective when the mission changed. The mission had changed. He spent the rest of the night researching, planning. The house was still full of ghosts, but now there was a flicker of purpose in the darkness. The pain was still a heavy cloak, but he would learn to wear it differently. Not as a shroud, but as a reminder of the stakes. He would use it as fuel. He would become a different kind of soldier, fighting a different kind of war. He would enter the world of law, armed with his pain and a newfound, steely resolve. He would never again accept less than the truth, never less than he deserved. The crucible had just begun to heat up. Law school was a relentless grind, a stark contrast to the physical demands of military service, but equally taxing in its own way. Eric, in his late 40s, was older than most of his classmates, his face etched with lines that spoke of experience they hadn't yet known. The transition from retired soldier to law student was jarring, yet his ingrained discipline served him well. He approached the coursework with the same rigor he'd applied to mastering combat strategy or weapon systems. He read voraciously, highlighting case law, dissecting arguments. His observant nature now focused on the nuances of legal text and courtroom dynamics. The pain from Leo's birthday remained, a deep scar, but it was no longer a paralyzing force. It had become a cold, focused energy. He channeled every ounce of that energy into his studies. His emotional responses were deliberately muted, replaced by a detached analysis. He learned to see legal problems as complex puzzles to be solved, human dramas stripped down to facts, statutes, and precedents. The just man still existed, but he was now guided by the precise, often unforgiving logic of the law. His personal experience wasn't just a motivator, it shaped his focus. He gravitated towards family law, particularly cases involving paternity disputes, child custody battles rooted in deception, and the rights of non-biological parents. He saw the vulnerability of men who had been misled, the legal hurdles they faced in unwinding financial obligations or maintaining relationships with children they had raised. This was where his pain found its purpose. During moot court sessions, he was formidable. His calm demeanor, honed by years of high-pressure situations, gave him an air of quiet authority. He wasn't flashy, but he was meticulously prepared, his arguments sharp and logical, his questions precise and penetrating. He was becoming the calculating lawyer, every move strategic, every word chosen for maximum impact. After graduating near the top of his class, he joined a small firm specializing in family law. He didn't just want a job, he wanted to be on the front lines of this specific battle. His early cases were challenging, often emotionally charged. He represented men who discovered years into a relationship and fatherhood that they were not the biological parent. He helped them navigate the complex legal terrain of disestablishing paternity, fighting for fair financial settlements, and sometimes, heartbreakingly, fighting for continued contact with children they loved, but had no legal tie to. There was the case of Mark, who had raised his stepdaughter from infancy, only to discover during a bitter divorce that the child was his wife's ex-boyfriend's. The ex suddenly wanted visitation. Eric fought fiercely for Mark's right to remain a part of the girl's life, arguing that fatherhood was more than biology, using his own pain to fuel a powerful, albeit legally structured, defense of the emotional bond. He didn't win Mark custody, but he secured significant visitation rights, a rare victory in such cases. Then there was the case of David, who was paying child support for a teenage boy who, a DNA test revealed, was not his son. David's ex-partner had known for years. Eric pursued the case with cold determination, not just to end the support payments, but to recover years of fraudulently obtained funds. He was relentless in discovery, uncovering a pattern of deliberate deceit. He secured a significant judgment for David, sending a clear message. His approach wasn't about retribution, but about correction. He aimed to use the law to bring justice to unjust situations, to provide legal protection where emotional vulnerability had been exploited. He wasn't overtly emotional in court. His empathy manifested as a fierce, strategic advocacy for his clients. He was cool under pressure, anticipating opponents' moves, building his cases with the precision of a military operation. The cold exterior was his shield, the calculating mind his weapon, and the secure knowledge of his own abilities and purpose was his armor. He built a reputation, quiet but solid. Lawyers on the other side learned to respect him, sometimes even fear his thoroughness. His clients found in him a rare combination, someone who understood their specific pain, but could fight their legal battle with objective clarity. He never spoke about his own past in detail, but it was the silent engine driving him. The picture of Leo, now tucked away in a drawer, was a reminder of the cost of deceit. It fueled his determination to ensure other men didn't suffer the same fate, or at least had the legal means to seek justice and rebuild their lives. He bought a new house, smaller than the one he'd shared with Sarah and Leo, free of ghosts. He filled it with things that represented his new life: legal books, case files, a quiet space for reflection. He didn't pursue new romantic relationships. The idea of that level of trust felt too risky, the potential for pain too high. He was secure in his solitude, in his purpose. He had built a new foundation for his life, not on the shifting sands of emotional entanglement, but on the solid rock of law, justice, and the unwavering commitment to never accepting less than truth and respect. His pain had not destroyed him, it had refined him, forging him into a formidable advocate and a man who understood the true cost of deception. He was ready for whatever came next, no longer the victim, but the one fighting for what was right. Years turned into a decade, then more. Eric Turner became a name synonymous with integrity and sharp legal strategy in the family court circuit. He wasn't the lawyer for quick divorces or simple prenups. He was the one you went to when the truth was murky, when paternity was questioned, when a man's role as a father figure was challenged by biological reality and past deceit. His office was understated but commanding. Dark wood, leather chairs, walls lined not just with law books but with framed testimonials and small tokens of gratitude from clients he had helped. He sat behind his large desk, calm and centered. The youthful vulnerability was long gone, replaced by the solid presence of a man who had faced his worst fears and emerged stronger. His eyes, still observant, now held a depth of understanding, a quiet knowledge of the complexities of human behavior and the messy intersection of love, lies, and law. The cold was a controlled detachment, the calculating, a finely tuned strategic mind, the secure and unshakable confidence in his ability and purpose. He had helped dozens of men untangle their lives from paternity fraud. He had successfully challenged presumed fatherhood, recovered millions in misspent child support, and in some cases negotiated continued, albeit legally defined, relationships between non-biological fathers and the children they had raised. He had even been instrumental in lobbying for legislative changes to make the process of disestablishing paternity fairer and more accessible. His personal life remained private. He dated occasionally, but never let anyone get too close, never allowed himself to become emotionally dependent. He learned the hard way that security came from within, from self-respect, and the knowledge of one's own worth, not from external validation or the promises of others. He applied his principle of never accepting less than he deserved, not just in legal battles, but in every interaction. He demanded honesty, clarity, and respect. Those who couldn't offer it didn't stay in his life. He thought about Leo sometimes, not with the raw, crippling pain of the early days, but with a quiet ache, a sense of loss for a potential future that never truly existed for him. He never tried to contact them. Sarah had made her choice, creating a reality built on deceit. He had accepted that painful truth and moved on. Leo was not his to raise, biologically or legally. His role had been based on a lie. Accepting that was crucial to his healing and his ability to build a new life. His focus shifted from the personal loss to the systemic injustice, channeling his energy into helping others avoid his fate. One afternoon, preparing for a complex case, he came across a news article about a young man, a high school athlete, excelling despite a challenging upbringing. A small photo accompanied the article. The face wasn't his own, but there was a familiar tilt to the head, a certain expression around the eyes that tugged at something deep inside him. The name was Leo. He read the details. The age matched, the general location matched. It was likely the same Leo. He felt a pang, bittersweet. He was proud of the young man, a fleeting, unacknowledged pride. He was also acutely aware that this young man's journey had unfolded without him, a path he was never truly on despite the 6 years he had walked it. He closed the article, a quiet sigh escaping him. The past was a part of him, undeniably, but it did not define his present or his future. His inspiration wasn't about revenge or bitterness. It was about resilience, about taking the most devastating experience of his life and transforming it into a force for good. He had turned betrayal into purpose, grief into strategic action, and vulnerability into strength. He had shown that it was possible to be shattered and still rebuild, to lose everything and still find a way to help others, to turn profound personal pain into a legacy of justice and advocacy. He stood up, walking to the window. The city skyline spread before him, a testament to human ingenuity and resilience. He had been a soldier, defending his country. Now he was a lawyer, defending men against a different kind of enemy, deceit and legal inequity. He was still fighting for justice, for truth, for the right to know the ground beneath your feet is solid. He was Eric Turner, retired military, renowned lawyer. He was just, but guided by calculated strategy. He was emotional, but his feelings were contained, fueling his purpose rather than controlling him. He was observant, missing nothing, using his insights to protect his clients. He was cold to manipulation, calculating in strategy, and profoundly secure in the man he had become. He had lost a family, but he had gained a life of meaning, built on the hard-won knowledge that sometimes the greatest strength comes from the deepest wound, and that the truth, no matter how painful, is always the only foundation worth building on. He had found his purpose, and he would never again accept anything less than the worth he knew he commanded, forged in the fires of betrayal, but tempered by the steel of his own resilience.